What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a build. It's been a very long time and hopefully through this one I can get you guys to stop watching that old video of the giant build and focus more on this one. What we have today is going to be a Marin Wildcat Trail, which is the women's version of the Bobcat Trail. So if you have either of those bikes, this applies to you. And today that's going to be a 1x drivetrain and a dropper post. Two very important modifications for all mountain bikers, so stay tuned. So let's get into it. Yeah, I like that better.
Okay, so let's first take a look at the parts we'll be installing. I'll leave all the product links in the description. My tools for the job. And now let's take a look at the parts we'll be eliminating. And now let's get started. We'll start off by uninstalling the front derailleur, the chain, the cranks, and now let's remove that bottom bracket.
Wow.
With those parts out the way, we can now install our new crankset. Make sure to pay attention to the width of your bottom bracket because that matters when you're adding spacers to the cartridge bearings. The preload cap on the Derailleur cranks is made of plastic, so you don't need to go crazy. Just make sure that you double check your torque on the pinch bolts of the crank arm. Let's remove this old derailleur, and while we're at it, we'll check the torque at the hanger. Let's move to the cockpit of the bike and install the new shifter. I don't plan on reusing these grips, so I'm just cutting them off. It's looking good already. Now with that knocked out, we'll go back to the back and install the new derailleur and get the drivetrain working. With the use of all new parts, we decided to use a new chain. Just make sure that when you're cutting it to length, when it's in the hardest gear, there's clearance between the chain and the cage. When setting up your new derailleur, it's important to pay mind to both the low limit and the high limit screws. You set the low limit screw to make sure that the derailleur is in line with the largest cog of the cassette, and with the high limit screw, you set that to make sure that the derailleur is in line with the smallest or hardest gear of the cassette. And don't forget to check the B-gap screw on the derailleur just to make sure that you have an adequate gap between the cassette and the jockey wheel of the derailleur. At this point, we should have a working drivetrain. Just make sure to check your cable tension to get everything dialed in. Woo! You should join my Patreon! No, seriously folks, you should think about that. Now let's get back to work and do this dropper post. Because of the location of our cable routing, I'll be working on the bike from the other side. Notice I'm clamping the top tube this time, that way I can remove the old post. Here, I'm eliminating the front shifter as well as the old cable. It's not going to help us out in routing the new one for the dropper, so I'm just pulling it out. When routing the dropper cable internally, there's no smoke and mirrors here. I just fish it through, starting at the bottom bracket and going up. Now it's time to try to get all of your rubber grommets situated. I use a pick to make new holes in those. Once you have your entire cable routed through the frame, it's time to start getting things situated. Generally, I find that if you have 1 to 2 inches out of the seat tube, then you need about 10 inches out of the front of the frame. That way you have enough slack to work with. But if you're in doubt, it's best to keep the cable long because you can always make it shorter later. Now just terminate your remote and everything should be looking pretty good. With that completed, just install your seat and look at that, you're done!
Yay!
Now it's time to take a step back and enjoy the fruits of your labor. Remember, the ride is the cure. I'll see you next time.